Hi there. Yes, Bhimrao Ramji Ambedkar, Chief Draftsman of the Constitution, Dalit icon, intellectual, strong critic of Gandhi, is the greatest Indian after Gandhi, according to the CNN-IBN History 18 BBC survey. Interestingly, the 28-member jury ranked Jawaharlal Nehru, India's first Prime Minister, as the #1 greatest Indian after Gandhi. But in the popular vote, registered through 81 lakh missed calls, 2 lakh social media users every day, it was Baba Sahib Ambedkar who was the runaway winner for the greatest Indian after Gandhi. So is Ambedkar today much more of a living presence than Nehru? That's what we are exploring tonight with our guests. Let me introduce them to you. Joining us tonight, we have Sudhindra Kulkarni of the BJP, author and columnist. Kancha Elaya, author and academic, joining us. Mridula Mukherjee, historian and author, is joining us. We'll also get you the views of Shashi Tharoor, Congress MP and author, to whom I spoke earlier. I began by asking Shashi Tharoor that you were on the jury that ranked Nehru as the greatest Indian. Now in the popular vote, Ambedkar is the runaway winner. From your point of view, is this an injustice to Nehru's legacy?
Well, look, they're both great Indians, and I would not say a single word against Dr. Ambedkar, for whom I have the highest respect. I've even written something about him in my book, The Elephant, the Tiger and the Cell Phone. My problem is that while greatness is very subjective and difficult to measure, it seems to me that in terms of the impact that they both made on the lives of millions of Indians, that it is difficult to suggest that Nehru's impact was the lesser.
Difficult to suggest that Nehru's impact was the lesser, but why would Nehru lose out so badly in the popular vote? Why is Nehru not as popular today?
I think that there may be something to be said for the, shall we say, the fact that the Nehru legacy has been proclaimed from the rooftops by so many of us for so long that perhaps some have inevitably lashed back against it in reaction to what they may have seen as widespread praise. They may have decided to defiantly vote for someone else. But it's sheer guesswork on my part. I have absolutely no idea, because it did seem to me that the contest was so clearly in Nehru's favor that the entire exercise of going through 100 names, then 50 names, then a short list and so on, actually didn't, to my mind, hold true or make much sense, because Nehru seemed to me so obviously the winner. And so in a sense it is educative for all of us that we have another winner. It's educative that we are discovering that Indians have so many different ways of looking at their own recent past.
It's educative that Nehru is not as popular as we think. So are you suggesting that Nehru has been badly served by his heirs?
No, that's what you're suggesting, Sagarika. I'm not suggesting that at all.
But from your point of view, Nehru was in fact obviously the winner of this title. What does Nehru mean for you?
If you look at the 4 big pillars of Nehruvianism, I would identify them first and foremost as democracy and democracy building, which we all cherish and we're all holding on to. Second, secularism, which clearly is under threat in many ways in our polity, but which the Congress Party certainly has never deviated from. Third, socialist economics. I'm personally not 100% convinced in all respects that it was the only or the best choice, because of some of the bureaucratic statism that was conducted in its name. But certainly the abiding concern for the poor of India remains an article of faith for the Congress Party. Whether we grow at 9% or 6%, our concern remains at the bottom 25%. And finally, a foreign policy of non-alignment, which in its own period and its own time, I think, had a tremendous validity, which obviously after the end of the Cold War and the end of the binary Cold War era is less relevant. But all of these principles and the independence of spirit that Nehru stood for, the way in which he gave voice to India, these are all things that one can never forget, and for which I believe there is no equal in the history of India since Mahatma Gandhi.
The 4 pillars of Nehruvianism: democracy, secularism, the socialist economy, non-alignment, giving India a voice and independence of spirit. But do you feel that in spite of these 4 pillars, the message of social justice, which Ambedkar stood for, is that a much more relevant, much more urgent message today? Is that the cry of today?
I think Ambedkar, in my mind, also stands for 4 important pillars. The first is also democracy. He was a very strong voice for democracy in the constitution-making process. The second was rule of law. He was a trained lawyer, somebody who was principal of the Government Law College, the first Indian principal in Mumbai, somebody who very passionately believed in law and justice. The third principle was, of course, the principle of social justice. He advocated reservations for the Dalits in particular, and he rightly wanted to undo the millennia of discrimination to which Dalits were subject. And the fourth principle, I think, is the principle of free thinking. He was a man who never accepted conformism to the prevailing orthodoxies. It was, for example, interesting that he defiantly wore a Western suit even when all Indian nationalists were wearing Indian garb, that he married outside his caste, indeed disdained caste, that he finally converted to Buddhism as a means of embracing a faith in which he felt equality for the Dalits was more possible. All of this reflected a fiercely independent spirit, and these 4 pillars of Ambedkarism, as it were, are also extremely valuable. That's why I said it's invidious to compare greatness. Ambedkar was undoubtedly great, Nehru was undoubtedly great. My argument is that Nehru's impact on more Indians for longer periods of time was more profound and lasting.
Nehru's impact was much more profound and lasting. That was Shashi Tharoor talking to me earlier. Let me put that to Kancha Elaya. Ambedkar was great, Nehru was great, but Nehru's impact was much more lasting and puts him on a different plane.
I think the jury itself seems to have put wrong priorities to select a person to be greatest. Take for example, at the turn of this century, there was a survey for choosing the greatest man of the millennium. They thought that it would be either Washington or Churchill or some great politician. But the result was Martin Luther of Germany, who has changed the whole world through a religious reform. Now here, the jury thought that a political leader like Jawaharlal Nehru will be, after Gandhi, would be the greatest. But they have not assessed that this could have been true before 1990. But after 1990, Ambedkar's personality has become colossus in terms of multiplicities. What are those multiplicities? Ambedkar is a political philosopher, social philosopher, an anthropologist and sociologist, and an intellectual of high order. More than anything, a spiritual thinker who rekindled the Buddhist imagination of Indian nation, which was completely eliminated by the time he took Buddhism in 1956. Here, Nehru does not compete with him. Here, even Gandhi does not compete with him. If you conduct a similar survey after 50 years, I think he will eclipse Gandhi.
He will also eclipse Gandhi. Let me put that to Sudhindra. Jawaharlal Nehru in the establishment, Jawaharlal Nehru the politician, Ambedkar the anti-establishment hero, what Kancha is saying, that his cry of social justice, finding that unique Martin Luther-like appeal. Does that place Ambedkar even greater than Nehru?
First of all, I want to make it clear that I'm not here as a BJP spokesman. I wrote that essay in Outlook, which was your partner in this entire exercise, in my individual capacity.
Right.
And whatever I say here is in my individual capacity.
Right.
Now, if your yardstick is contribution to India's freedom struggle and the making of free India, the building of free India, then Nehru ji is miles ahead of Ambedkar. Sometimes in order to be politically correct, intellectuals and political activists, they tend to be factually incorrect. The facts of history are so clear that if we go to what Ambedkar did during the freedom struggle, his contribution to India's struggle for political freedom is next to nothing. In fact, he opposed time and again the Congress movement for independence. He says this will in fact bring in tyranny of the Hindus, upper caste Hindus. He called the Congress party, the Congress movement again and again and again tyrannical, and he sided very often with the British. He joined the Viceroy's Council at a time when the whole of India was fighting against the British during the Quit India movement.
He did not join the Quit India movement. He saw the nationalist movement very much as a Hindu upper caste movement.
He joined the Viceroy's Council. So this is, just a moment, please. You had your say. Nehru ji, how many times he went to jail? The British jail? 9 times, totaling up to 9 years. How many times Ambedkar went to jail? Now, if in Nehruji's contribution to the freedom movement, if freedom at all means anything to us. Secondly, the making of free India after independence. As Prime Minister, as the foremost leader of India after Gandhiji, it is he who, built the
blueprint of
foundations
modern India.
What Shashi Tharoor said, I entirely agree. It is, much of what is modern India, he committed grave blunders, Nehruji. But those blunders are insignificant in my view to some of the lapses of judgment of Ambedkar. And let's not turn this entire thing into just a politically correct debate. We'll be doing grave injustice to history.
Now, I'll just make one point. When you are assessing great Indian, you are not assessing whether he fought freedom struggle or whether he went to jail. What is the overall contribution to a nation's reconstruction? Now you have the Indian Renaissance figures, Mahatma Phule and Raja Ram Mohan Rai. And you have the Indian Reformation figures, Ambedkar and Gandhi. Nehru does not figure there, Sardar Patel does not figure there. What is the thought? What is the spiritual agenda? What is the social agenda? What is political agenda? What is legal agenda? This is where Ambedkar is a holistic, reformative, revolutionary.
But don't you think that, as Sudhindra is saying, without Nehru, there really would be no modern India. There would be no industry. There would be no educated middle class. There would be no non-aligned movement which gave India that voice. Nehru really laid down that blueprint. But let me bring in Mridula in here. Mridula, the fact is, Ambedkar was the runaway winner. He was in fact the runaway winner. He, as Outlook magazine put it, 1.9 million popular votes. He in fact led the pack from the start. He polled more than all the others who were shortlisted, all the other 10 in the final phase, more than all the 9 who were there in the last 10 shortlisted. Does this huge victory of Ambedkar surprise you? Is it educative to us?
I think it's something which has to be analyzed. I'm not doubting your methodology or figures, I don't know it enough. But taking everything at face value, I think we need to understand why, and there can be many reasons why, which we could go into. And one of them, of course, could be that in contemporary times, those for whom Ambedkar has become an icon and even
mobilized very strongly on the internet,
possibly that it is an act of mobilization and expression of an assertion of an identity, which obviously Nehru doesn't figure in that way in the picture. I'm saying it can be done, but I would like to just bring in one point. I mean, Shashi Tharoor has said many things with which I agree, and so has Sudhindra ji. I'd like to bring in one with a little elaboration, not just saying that we owe the secularism, and his secularism was important. I think that especially after Gandhiji's assassination in January 1948, the terrible times that we were going through and the cry for a Hindu Rashtra, millions of people, population shifting, over 600,000 dead, that we do owe it to Nehru to lead the resistance to the communal onslaught, and the manner in which he fought back that communal threat, and by 1951 in the elections, the communal forces, the Hindu communal forces get only 10%, 6% of the vote and 10 seats. They're defeated in the elections. He actually
Nehru fought and defended the constitutional principles.
No, not just that. He actually, in that election campaign of 51-52, he actually addressed physically about 1/10 of the population of India. His connect with people. His connect with people was just something fantastic.
Do you want to respond to
the manner in which he spoke to people, the manner in which he educated them? So that struggle to build a secular state, I think that is his stellar contribution. We owe that today you're still talking about protecting the people of the Northeast, all the values for which we stand. I think this is so important.
I think, we must understand the intellectual world of India did not study Ambedkar even 1/10 what they studied Gandhi or Nehru. Ambedkar wrote 34 volumes. Nehru wrote 2 books. And Nehru's
so you're saying there's a systematic, campaign to omit Ambedkar's writing from the narrative.
Selected works already out.
No, just a minute.
I mean, this is
See,
an
if you
absurd
just
comparison.
read Maulana Azad, you are saying that Ambedkar is Nehru is the only builder of modern India. Maulana Azad said, I have committed a mistake by choosing him as the President of India to follow me, and he became the Prime Minister and the damage was done. So if there was Maulana Azad, India would have been definitely built far better in different forms.
So you actually have a problem with the kind of India that Nehru built, and you're saying that in fact Ambedkar was a far superior intellect in terms of what he achieved in terms of his writing.
He's a prophetic figure after Buddha.
And a prophetic figure. Let's take a short break at this point because we have to run into break and come back and carry on that parallel between Ambedkar and Nehru, and also talk a little bit more about Ambedkar. He was a thought-provoking and original thinker, someone who perhaps after this poll will be rediscovered because his thought is truly stirring. But does that make him the greatest Indian? We'll come back and pursue that question. Bhimrao Ramji Ambedkar. He is the greatest Indian according to our survey after Mahatma Gandhi. He has even beaten Jawaharlal Nehru to that spot. We're asking, was Ambedkar in fact greater than Jawaharlal Nehru, than even a Sardar Patel? I'm going to read out a quote by B.R. Ambedkar. We're going to bring that up for you in just a bit. This is just one glimpse of his thought-provoking and original thought. A democratic form of government presupposes a democratic form of society. The formal framework of democracy is of no value and would indeed be a misfit if there was no social democracy. The politicals never realized that democracy was not only a form of government, it was essentially a form of society. Let me put it to you. This is in fact an overarching vision. It is in fact a vision which we are struggling with today. Democracy is a misfit in our society which is not democratic. Do you believe that Ambedkar's thought was much more original and much more prophetic than his peers, that intellectually he was head and shoulders? I know before you answer that question, you also want to give us a caveat on his role on the Constitution.
I want to first say that Ambedkar truly deserves greatness because of his unique contribution to adding the concept of social democracy to political democracy. Without social democracy, political democracy is meaningless.
Meaningless, which we are finding today. We are finding it illustrated today.
That is what Ambedkar fought for, and he fought very radically, for which we really must be grateful to him. But I am on the point of facts of history. Even your channel is misleading the people by describing Ambedkar as the chief draftsman of the Constitution. This is not true. There is a myth, much of his greatness.
Chairman of the drafting committee of the Constitution.
Much of the greatness that people assume of Ambedkar is on this understanding that he was the architect of the Constitution. It is not true. He was the chairman of the drafting committee, and the drafting committee again did not draft on its own. There was a constituent assembly of more than 200 very illustrious members, and many of the important subject committees of the Constituent Assembly were in fact headed by either Nehru or Patel. In fact, Nehruji's contribution to the making of the Indian Constitution is greater than that of Ambedkar. It all began with the most important objectives resolution of July 1946.
Right. No, we can't go into too much of detail because
it's very important. It formed the terms of reference of the Constitution, and Nehruji's speech at the time of moving that resolution, he drafted that resolution, and our preamble to the Constitution even today is drawn from that.
I think
so we must not mislead the people. Nehruji's contribution to the Constitution was greater than
Ambedkar's. If the BJP people suddenly turns to Nehru and becomes admirers, I have no problem. But the point is, that Ambedkar's greatness in Ambedkarite's view did not lie in drafting the Constitution. Its greatness lies in working out a strategy to abolish social and democratic inequalities.
No, but respond to what Mridula was saying, that there's a political movement around Ambedkar. There is the BSP, there is the Dalit movement, there is the Dalit Bahujan movement. These are keeping alive the political constituency of Ambedkar, and therefore the statues, therefore the mobilization perhaps on the internet, and therefore the political present day following, which Nehru doesn't have.
That is where, Ambedkar was not taught in the universities as a nationalist till 1990, the Mandal movement. They all rejected him to be taught. They thought that he was a lackey of the British. But the people from the below brought him up because they needed abolition of untouchability, abolition of caste, annihilation of caste and riddance of Hindus.
Right, the annihilation of caste. Has this
that
been,
is the greatest thing
do all of us in the metropolitan circle actually
never found him.
Miss just how important this concept of annihilation of caste is? Because it is something that obviously touches a huge chord across the board. I want to ask you that question. I also want to ask you, has Nehru been maligned? Is Nehru no longer the figure that he was in perhaps our generation to the new generation because he has been maligned and badly served by his heirs, perhaps his family, his party? Is that Nehru's problem?
First question.
Very quickly.
I think, we, just as we are forgetting Nehru, we are forgetting our even older history. The national movement took up the whole issue of annihilation and abolition of caste. Fight against untouchability started with the non-cooperation
Gandhi
movement.
never spoke of annihilation of caste.
I'm sorry.
He spoke of abolition of untouchability.
No.
But
Nehru did not write a single line on caste actually.
Okay. Allow me to disagree. I think in my opinion, Gandhiji's contribution to the annihilation of caste, you can use different words,
is greater than Ambedkar.
Is very great. Okay. And as far as Nehru is concerned, his whole ideology, caste doesn't even figure in the sense that he believes, he was very influenced by Marxist philosophy, so he believed in social, economic and political equality.
It was class that was more important.
That's right. He analyzed society equality. That doesn't mean that he was a supporter of caste. On the contrary, he did not believe in it.
So he
the Constitution abolished untouchability
because his worldview was
reservations were adopted in the Constitution.
Really rushing
and secondly, about the maligning. I think one reason that I'd like to bring in is that, with the new economic policy reforms being adopted in 1991, it became fashionable to debunk the Nehruvian period, which in fact provided the foundation for what we've been able to achieve today. Or the contribution to institutions, to educational institutions, to the IITs.
You made that point, Mridula. We have to run against time. You've written in your article in Outlook, which I wanted to quote, is the idolatry of Ambedkar, and Ambedkar himself very opposed to idolatry. He said hero worship is one of the drags of Indian culture. Do you think that his followers are the followers of Ambedkar deifying him too much?
Of course, there is so much deification of Ambedkar. Ambedkar was no doubt a great man, but the kind of deification that's taking place is breeding intolerance. The slightest criticism of Ambedkar is inviting such harsh reaction, often violent reaction.
That actually happened on our channel.
When untouchables want to become touchables and equals, owning Ambedkar, naturally the upper caste who enjoyed everything will react to that. But the idolatry thing is, Buddha was opposed to idolatry. Buddha became a god sort of idol.
Right.
Ambedkar idol is not that kind of idol. It is a liberative idol for
liberative idol
for illiterates. Right. And for us is a prophetic reformer, prophetic transformator and liberator.
Right, he's a liberator for the masses. Nehru isolated within a certain class, that is Kanchailaya's view. Sudhindra Kulkarni is saying Nehru provided that blueprint of modern India. Unusual for someone in the BJP to say that, but I'm very glad you're saying that. Mridula Mukherjee is saying that the great constitutional ideals remain true today because of Nehru. Thank you very much indeed, Sudhindra Kulkarni, Kanchailaya, Mridula Mukherjee. Was Ambedkar greater even than Nehru? What are you telling us there? 59 are saying yes. Thanks for watching.